Hi, it's Sunday, and we're back with our WIFF Wingish International Film Festival conversations. And I have the great pleasure of sharing conversation with the incomparable filmmaker Benjamin Ross. He's had a wonderful career, and we're very honored to have you with us, Benjamin. Welcome to the festival.
Gwetch, Emily, it's great speaking with you. And thank you, Wingish International Film Festival, for receiving this incredible honor. It's really great to be here.
I'm going to step it back because there's a lot of young filmmakers and several that actually attend Wingish Film Institute. How did you start your career? How did you move into filmmaking? And what was it like having so much success at the beginning of your career?
Oh, well, I mean, I think everyone enters the film industry and being a storyteller at different points. I started, I think back in elementary school, I had to write a story for English class. And then, it just had to be a little 5-page story, but I took it home and I rewrote the entire Army of Darkness movie by Sam Raimi for 180 pages. I got a B for plagiarism because it wasn't my original material. But if I was doing that in elementary, then I fast forward to, high school. I started acting too, and that's I think how I really entered film was as an actor. And then there came a point where I decided I wanted to step into the shoes of the storyteller and the director that I wanted to work with as an actor, and I wanted to create very intriguing, fascinating roles for characters to portray and to create a palette of characters every story told. That's kind of how I look at different characters and stories. I think of them as colors on a canvas, because you choose your colors for your canvas. So when it comes to characters, whether it's young characters or older characters, where they come from in life, and most of all, how they balance in a dynamic ensemble cast, and giving something worthwhile for the actors to work with is sort of where I come from in my origin.
After Northlander, how did you conceive of, and what was the genesis of Parallel Minds?
Well, the genesis of Parallel Minds was initially, and to this point, it's continued to stay as a indigenous futurist, a cautionary tale against the troubles and the perils that technology can bring us, and also merging that with also looking at something more relevant too, like a few years ago when I started writing the script for Parallel Minds, I always was and still am so affected by the traumas of residential schools, and drawing parallels between those. And before even knowing the full extent of how many children were discovered, and to be honest, now the entire development as reported, it being brought into the mainstream has felt just utterly numbing, really, having written a story and having all of this come out. It's a sign that, that was an important topic to explore in science fiction. And since this is a special Q&A, I'd like to talk. Actually, I'll tell you the original beginning of Parallel Minds. That it had the young character of young Kokum, played by Imagine Cardinal, who's an incredible young actress who I had the opportunity to work with, who even won Best Actress at the American Indian Film Festival for The Saver. And her journey was to escape the residential school and to see and expose the fear and the pain of truly escaping from an institution, and further draw that parallel between that institution of control and how the world of technology that we're in now is exhibiting a control on us. Kokum, as a residential school survivor, left with that pain and turned it into a courage, as many survivors are now elevated in their strength and in their memory. And that's why memory plays such an important part in Parallel Minds. That's what Indigenous futurism, I think, needs to convey in its progressive messaging.
Could you expand on that a little bit? I think I was moving into memory and how memory is such an important narrative arc, and also it pushes us into memory in a very sort of powerful way. But could you expand on a little bit how you ended your last sentence?
Yeah, of course. So, well, memory, remembering, is something that Indigenous people are amongst the strongest in the world for. And that sacred understanding of memory is why it's entirely conceivable that whether it's a high-level position like the newly appointed Indigenous Governor General to an Indigenous scientist like Dr. Elise Perot, played by the incredible Michelle Thrush, would be entirely capable of ethically developing a technology of the future that could actually touch on memory, for how strong of command of memory that Indigenous people have, and ethically, and not making it commercially focused in a mainstream way, but maybe be anchored in a focus of the human spirit, or the human search for our ancestors, or the human search for life beyond ours. Indigenous futurism as a subgenre of science fiction, the science, the way that science fiction, well, for Indigenous futurism, the way that science fiction can and should carry prophetic moments, and I'm sorry, but having the mindset of space colonization persist and renew in the era of remake after remake of science fiction movies is something that I think it needs to evolve, or we won't evolve. That's why you look at other filmmakers now making also, they call it, could be Indigenous genre work. You have Dennis Goulet's Night Raiders, you have Jeff Barnaby's Blood Quantum. Indigenous futurism, it explores the vast universe from the point of view of not of a spaceman from a space colony, but of more of a nomadic wanderer. Encountering the universe in all of its possible worlds and life forms with respect and solace, to live in kindness and fellowship with the world and the universe, and to live in harmony and not conquer. So it comes from a very different grounded perspective, Indigenous futurism. And that's why I going into the future, I've committed to this genre and this movement of storytelling, because there's many more stories to be discovered.
And within Indigenous futurism, as you speak to it, Benjamin, how does the recollection, the recalling of the past, and the rooted ground in spirituality, how do you pull that into your characters? You've done a beautiful job, and especially with the digital shapeshifter, how does that then come out of the concept of shapeshifter into your Indigenous futuristic approach?
Mm-hmm. Well, you look at the command of memory, and mostly the respect for elders and ancestors that I think, looking to them for knowledge, looking to the character Kokum I mentioned, who I think she did what she did in her time, but it's through taking a step back and looking at an intergenerational connection between one generation to the other, and what kind of power and what kind of strength is traded and transcended from one to another is something I think is really important. I also drew upon my own grandmother for the character of Kokum as well, and so lately when our elders pass, basically it becomes for us this inward reflection where we start to look at our own timeline up to where we are now, and give us a strength to look at what's ahead, and to combat the negatives and the atrocities with courage and hope.
How do you approach all of that too within your actual physical process of making the film, your relationship with your director of photography, your perception of your set design and score, and how do all of those elements then sort of formulate and come to this vision that you have?
Well, as a filmmaker, when you're writing a script, that is, if you're the one who's authoring the story, you're living in the world of your characters for a good year before you actually you meet them in person. And so while you're working with them alone for that period of time, you're listening, and you're also speaking to them too. And by the time you meet them, what's the word, you make good on those relationships that you already made with these people, and it's like you're meeting them again, like you're having a reunion, a creative reunion with these people who, and that's why I think, approaching when you're a team with good spirit, good intentions to tell a good story, especially one that has like a moral backbone, and not just blood for the sake of blood, I think is where you can have some very special relationships form, and trust in your team and listen to what they have to say.
How did you and your director of photography approach the look or the lens with which you wanted us to experience your story?
Well, also, speaking of honors, Jeff Mahari won Best Cinematography at 2 film festivals. One of them was called Twisted Dreams, also in America, down maybe last month. Jeff has an incredible eye, and I think he's now in the CSC. And it's no surprise, because he's very down to earth and young, or he looks young, but he's actually not. But just the way that him and I bonded, I think, worked really well. And he respected that I had a strong visual vision for everything. I storyboard everything before I walk in. I don't want to arrive like where people have any questions. If I'm going to live with the story for a year, I use methods to storyboard every shot and every scene, and I just approach it like as a starting point when I get there on the day, and I share the storyboards with all the cast and crew, and we kind of design our shots and our looks, and it gives everyone a baseline on which to visually work. And that's kind of where we're able to get a lot of really interesting angles that I think are important for visual production value of your storytelling that you're doing. Same with the production design. Also, when it came to designing the look and feel of the world, we had to make Western Canada look a little more worldly, and so we combined it with B-roll shots of different urban cities from around the world, and we built up the look of the movie where all the sets, the walls of our sets that we designed were kind of like this composition here, right? Very strange angles of rooms. We had like 5-sided rooms that weren't like a normal cube, and a lot of custom laser cut things. Shannon Chappell did outstanding with designing the production design. So I think also developing ongoing relationships with your key creative team is really important. So you can look at one film as a chapter of a larger story being told across your different stories. And that's what I try to do. Sometimes I'll hide names of characters in one, or I'll build out the name of the protagonist in the next movie that relates to Alice in Wonderland, in this case Parallel Minds, so that eventually there's almost I would call it like a meta narrative being told, where the voice of a story is like an invisible spirit flowing through the different movies and stories that are being told. And so if one watches all of them, then they'll catch these things and they'll say, oh, okay, so even though this story is 1,000 years ahead of this one or behind, that at least there is some kind of a cohesion of what's being explored here.
So I have 2 questions. One for filmmakers that are watching. How long did it take from putting pen to paper, when you started writing, to lock picture and distribution? What was the time frame for you on your film?
Our distributor was very patient with us because we had a lot of visual effects to do. The story took about, I wanted to actually like a space production from the story, because I always like to get a few extra months in there for a good third draft. And then we went to camera, and that was a month. And then post took a year because of schedules and visual effects, and then the
Yeah.
pandemic happened, and then the festival cycle kind of got crazy for a while. But I mean, you know, you look at the whole process from start to finish. I mean, it took I would say, you know, 1 year of development and about it should have been 1 year of post, but it was a little longer with schedules. And then now, you know, you fast forward to now, and 30 festivals later, and a film is like a story, right? It of its own, it just keeps growing.
Um, well, it's sort of a two-pronged question. How close is this? How close are the stories that you build to your own life? What do you draw from your own personal experiences? And two, what do you want us to leave the theater with? What are you hoping that we see, or that we learn as we walk out of the theater after watching Parallel Minds?
Well, I think a lot of the stories I write they're externally pointing outwards. When you look at the world, you know, through your eyes and through your imagination, the message that I think all of the stories that I write, really, I come out with wanting people to leave the auditorium knowing that as a human being who's alive here on this planet for this moment in time, this little blip, that for the time that they are alive and conscious, that we might not reach the very far edge of the universe in our lifetime, but with our imagination and our eyes and our sight, we're able to see what the other side of the universe looks like, or what 1,000 years in the future might look like, if we can imagine it, and then leave it to me to make it real, because I'll work with the team to make that happen. That's what I want the audience to know from the end of the movie they see.
Well, thank you so much for sharing your film with our audiences. It's really been a pleasure. I wish we had an hour. And film is fabulous. And what's up next?
Currently, me and the team, we're in post-production on my next Indigenous futurist feature film called The First Encounter, starring Sarah Louise MacArthur from Outlander and Burden of Truth, and Eugene Braverock from Marvel's Wonder Woman. We shot the movie last summer. It's incredible, and I love the footage. It's about Indigenous extraterrestrial civilization, and it's a period movie in the 1990s. So we spent a lot of time talking to elders about skinwalkers and star people. So that's from that perspective is the next story that we've uncovered great ground on. So I'm looking very forward to sharing that with the rest of the world, and with Wingush, of course, when the time comes.
Yes, we hope to see. Maybe we'll be in person next year, and we'll have the pleasure of having you with us.
I'd love that very much, Phyllis. I really would. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
It's really been a pleasure. I don't know how I learned so much, and I feel like I understand your film from from inside your perspective. And like I said, I wish we had longer, but thank you very much, and congratulations. And I can't wait to see your next film.
Thank you. Thank you, Phyllis. Thank you.
Thank you very much.